Hi there, Nick Watts here for We Love Betting. I'm somewhat hanging my head in shame after another poor week, another poor showing last time out. Wigan came to my rescue of all teams in the FA Cup, but there's only one way to get back to anyways, and that's to have a few more bets. So here come my three best Premier League bets for the weekend. I'm starting with Swansea v Southampton. I think I've said it before in these videos, but it's a bit of a weird one for me, Southampton, as much that I spent the whole first half of the season defending them, saying they're a better side than people thought, and I've actually spent the second half of the season not so much saying they're not as good as people I think they are, but not as good as the bookies seem to be pricing them up at, certainly. All credit to them, some great performances, love the way they've played against the likes of Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool, but for me, they've really had their best performances at home. I used this rationale for the Reading game recently and got burned as a result, but at the same time, that is their only away win in their last 6 games. Their away record overall is only the 14th best in the Premier League. They've won 3, drawn 5, lost 8 when you include that Reading game in there. And for me, that's not a particularly great record to be taken to the Liberty Stadium, which is a difficult place to go. There's no question about it. I really think it's quite unfair, the accusations of being on the beach that have been levelled at Swansea of late, either side of the Capital One Cup victory. Okay, you look at the form book and you can say, just in that sense, it rings true a little bit. 1-2, drawn 1, lost 5. Either side of those games, but of course one of those was the games where they rested a load of players against Liverpool. Their 2 home defeats in that run were against Spurs and Arsenal, 2 sides really motivated to battle it out for top 4, and actually Swansea gave them both a decent game and probably could have nicked a point in either or both of those games, and I don't think it would have been a massive shock whatsoever. Excuse me. The 2 wins during that run were at home against QPR and Newcastle, and their record versus 8th and below is very good at home. It's won 6, drawn 3, and just lost the 1 game, which was a bizarre game against Norwich, a 4-3 thriller. Very strange one, can't really explain an anomaly like that. But nonetheless, record very solid against these sort of sides. Only 3 points separate these sides as well, which I think is really significant because surely Laudrup's going to be, drilling this into his players. You can't afford to be just slipping down the table. And although it's quite commonplace, I actually think that a side of Swansea's quality has what it takes to win at home to Southampton without too much trouble. And at 7-5, they look like a big price to me and one that I'm snapping up. Quickly on to the second game then. It's West Ham v Wigan, and this is becoming a bit of a staple part of my weekly betting, looking out for over 2.5 goals in Wigan games. To me, it seems to be consistently quite a big price, which always surprises me. I owe Wigan a bit of love for last week. I haven't given them that much over the years, but thank you, Wigan. You saved me a little bit of face, at least. And they're in decent form, as per this time of the season. Seems to be the norm. Obviously, they lost that game against Man City midweek, but ultimately, to lose 1-0 at City, it's not a bad result, is it? It was a pretty decent winner from Carlos Tevez, so no complaints from me there in terms of Wigan. I prefer to back them generally at bigger prices, and although 23 to 10 doesn't exactly jump off the page, it's better for me than backing them at odds on when they're at home to sort of sides around them. So interesting one. West Ham in decent form themselves, actually. Probably a little unlucky not to beat Manchester United with that offside decision, albeit you probably need superhuman eyes to be able to see margins that small. They've won 2, drawn 3, lost 1 of their last 6, and at home it's 1-3, drawn 2, lost 1. So in pretty solid form, and Andy Carroll's been a big part of that, hasn't he? 5 goals in 8 games, and he's looking like the striker that they wanted to sign. Maybe even the striker that Liverpool wanted to sign of late. I'm actually a fan of his, to be honest, without going into too much detail. I think he just needs to be at the right club, simple as that. Hopefully he can contribute here because I'm backing goals. Wigan actually on a bit of a rare run of unders. 3 in a row they've gone without an over 2.5 goals, which is very odd for them, and as much as 10 of 11 games prior to that run had paid it out. 2/3 of their away games all season have paid out over 2.5 goals as well. West Ham, they've seen 60% of their home games go over 2.5 goals. They've scored in all but one of those games, and indeed the last 4 meetings between these sides have tended to be goal feasts, over 2.5 goals in each of those. So at 10-11 with William Hill, I think that's a great little price as well, and it's my second bet. Third and final then, Norwich v Reading. I'm going the opposite way here. I think this is one that's bound for very little goalmouth action. Norwich, I should say, to begin with, are just too short for me at 8-11. I think I've talked about Reading being too big on so many occasions, particularly on Twitter this year, and maybe it hasn't always come off for me. But at the same time, Norwich 8-11 to win a game when they've won once in 16 just seems remarkable to me. Yes, the game's totally winnable. Do I expect them to win? Yeah, I probably do. But at 8-11, that seems like an extraordinarily short price to me. They've been draw specialists, and it's been magnificent to back the draw week in, week out of late. It's 5 of the last 6 at home have gone that way, 14 in all, which is among the most, if not the most, in the Premier League. Been very profitable indeed. Indeed, the reverse fixture of this match was a 0-0 draw at Reading, so already some train of thought there. I'm actually going for unders, as I say. These two, 17th and 18th in the scoring charts. It's actually Reading that are 17th in that mark. Norwich, 31 goals they've scored this year, which is only 3 more than Stoke, who are the lowest scorers. At home, they've scored 18 goals in 16 games. Not particularly impressive at all. Only 3 teams scored less on their own patch. So no surprise really then that 63% of Norwich home games have been under 2.5 goals. Reading, who I thought were over specialists for much of this season, seem to be on a bit of a goal drought. 3 or 4 games they've failed to score, and if their goalkeeper has even half as good a game against Norwich as he did against Liverpool, I think unders is absolutely nailed on. So to see it at even money with Bet Victor looks a bit tasty to me. So to recap quickly then, in reverse order, Norwich Reading, we're going under 2.5 goals at even money. I've got West Ham Wigan to go over 2.5 goals, that's at 10-11, and I've got Swansea to beat Southampton at 7-5. Let's get back to winning ways. Come on!